Okay, everyone. I'm going to start with a question again. Who here has run a usability test? What's the biggest pain in the ass when running a usability test?
Users don't get it.
Users not showing up.
Also known as negative feedback.
Okay, you're on the right track. The biggest pain in the ass is finding the users in the first place. Testbirds have solved that problem for us, and Markus is going to tell us all about it. Thank you.
Hello. Thanks for the invitation. It's good to be back. I was here 2 years ago when we had the Exist. Some of you might know the Exist stipendium. I think the last talk that you have at the end. Yeah, and today I want to talk a little bit about, of course, what we do in the service, but also focus on some lessons that we learned and also that we're still learning every day. I have lots of slides. I might go a little quickly. If you have questions, feel free to ask them during the talk if I can answer them in 1 or 2 sentences. If it's a bigger question, maybe wait till the end. Yeah, I think I get started. This is the founders team. Georg on the left, Philip on the right, and that's me in the middle. Basically, that's part of our website. And my background is something totally else. I studied media communication. I worked as a freelance journalist for a little while, and I went to school with Philip. And actually, the two of them had the idea for Testbirds, and they brought me in at the very beginning, which was end of 2011. Yeah, this is what I want to talk about today, a little bit about what we do, what happened in the past 3.5 years, and then some of the things that we found we need to do, otherwise it won't work. And maybe what's important is none of us founded a startup before this, so this is the first time, and we're basically learning by doing every day. This is what we do. Yeah, we started end of 2011. We had the Exist financing from the European government, and then we had 2 financing rounds so far, one in 2012 and one in 2014. So that's wrong, that was 2014. And that was basically used mostly for growing the team and internationalization. We are about 50 people at the moment. We have an office here in Munich, which is the main office, and then one in Amsterdam, one in London, and a franchise company in Budapest. So most of the employees are sitting here in Munich. And the testers that we have, and this is basically going to the service that we offer to our clients, they are distributed in, I think, 120-something countries worldwide. So what's the pitch that we usually give to our clients? The first question that I ask them is, do you have all the devices that your app actually runs on? Have you tested on those devices? And 100% of the time the answer is no, because you can't. This is just Android, which is fragmentation is a big issue. And there's many more operating systems and versions of those operating systems. And yeah, you need to make sure that it actually runs on at least the most important ones. And then you also need to make sure that maybe it doesn't only run on a smartphone or a tablet, but you might have an app for a smart TV or the new Apple Watch or whatever. So basically things are going, or apps are going into lots of different devices, your fridge, and the users need to use them. They might have them at home, but your access to them is quite restricted usually, and it's quite difficult to get them to come to your office for interviews or for you to visit them at their homes. And those might be some of the target groups that you have, maybe not. If you want to, you can, there's some funny videos. This is from Sony Ericsson. If you Google Product Testing Institute, those are funny. It's promotional videos, but they highlight the importance of user feedback quite well, because those people have no idea what they're doing with the phones. But the message is, have you asked, that's what Ralph basically was pitching, have you asked your target group, what they actually think, what their problems are. They might not always tell you the right thing. They might tell you what they need, and that's not actually what they need. But if you have a good sample, you can deduct things that are important for improving your applications. And that's basically, those are the questions that we try to answer with Testbirds. So what we do is we do crowd testing, crowdsourced software testing, and that means we have lots of testers, lots of end users signed up on our platform. We know what kinds of devices they have, and we know their hobbies, their jobs, how much they earn a year, what kind of pets they have. And basically we provide those access to those users for our clients. And we do this for functional testing on different kinds of devices and for getting user feedback, talking about usability and user experience on the other hand. And what we do is basically we're the middleman. We make sure that the feedback is not just any kind of feedback, but it's high quality. So we manage the testers, we evaluate the results, and we provide recommendations for improvements to the clients. Yeah, these are some of the services that we offer. So basically, in any stage of the development process that you can think of, there are usually ways that you can integrate the user. So not just at the end of your beta phase, but when you have a prototype, you have a click dummy, and you want to get feedback. That's when you should ask the users. Or even before that, when you think about a relaunch of your website, you might want to have a look at the competition and compare them to your current site to get some feedback on what's good and what's not so good, and what you should emphasize on, and maybe where you need to get better at. The one thing on the right-hand side is a combined service that we call bugability. So people are giving feedback and they're also trying to find bugs at the same time. Okay, this was the plan end of 2011 that we had. We applied for Exist as well, so we needed this kind of stuff, but we had a plan basically to build the platform, to grow the tester base for around about 6 months and then launch. And what happened was we actually had the first client. So Christmas 2011, we talked to a contact that we had, and we kind of told them, yeah, we have this business and it's going well, and we've done several tests already. And then he said, okay, I want to do a test. Let's do it in a couple of weeks. And we had no website, no platform, no users, nothing. We had the name of we had Testbirds basically. So what did we do? Philip built in 4 weeks, basically built a very basic version of the platform. We called all our friends and our parents. That was for a sports shop based in Munich for their website, and we had them test the website. Everything worked through email. They sent us emails with the feedback. I actually wrote like a 10-page FAQ on how to test and what you need to do. So it was really bumpy, but we got some nice feedback and it kind of worked. The client was happy about the feedback, and we learned so much, like things that we didn't thought were important, things that wasn't on that Gantt chart. Suddenly we knew about them, and kind of that was a critical moment for us, because after that we started doing this kind of approach all the time. So actually go out there, do projects with the customer, ask them for their feedback, and then develop the service around that feedback. So something else was actually write a final report, which might seem obvious to you, but we didn't have one in the first couple of months. And then one of the clients said, hey, how about you aggregate those results for us, and because I need to present this to my manager. So we actually asked him, okay, what would you like to have it, what should it look like? And then next time we did a project for him, we wrote a management summary, gave him some recommendations on how to improve it, which is something obvious, but we just didn't have it in the beginning. And that's kind of how everything happened, one step after another. I'm not going to go through the whole timeline. Basically, it's just some impressions. Yeah, maybe something interesting. In September 2013, we basically launched a franchise in Budapest, and that was also something that we didn't plan. We went to Cebit that year, and we met a couple of guys from Hungary, and we talked to them, and they were really interested in crowd testing and how it worked. And it turns out they're from another IT company that's quite successful in Budapest, and they asked us, hey, we would like to franchise this. So we kind of evaluated for ourselves, is that a market that we would like to go into? It wasn't, because of several criteria like language and just the market wasn't that attractive for us. And so we said, yes, why not? And now basically they're a pretty successful company there, and they just expanded to Slovakia last month. So that's kind of another example of sometimes things just happen to you and you need to go with it. And then what happened in 2014 is essentially we started internationalization, meaning until then we were mostly focusing on Germany or the DACH region, and we noticed that the clients really appreciated us being on site and being able to talk to them in person. So we started offices in London and Amsterdam for now, where we have a small team of salespeople and project managers, basically being there for the client, while the testers are distributed around the globe, but mostly in Europe. Okay, we saw this before. We also used this and found it quite helpful. We actually, for the first 2 years, we did this with a team every 4 months roughly to update it, because it changes all the time. And I'm not going to go through all of the different things unless you have a specific question, but I think it's important that you realize that your services need to change and how you can actually it helps you just visualize what you do anyway. So for example, what I just mentioned, we went from the DACH region to expand in a couple of other countries. We also added a self-service of our managed service that we had so far. So basically enabling the client to access the users for himself. So you can go online, you have your account, you can set up the test for yourself, and you can get the testers to test, and then whatever it is, whether it's bugs or feedback, evaluate it for yourself. So basically we are out of the equation in that case. Yeah, that's another channel, of course, because it also is cheaper then, and it addresses other kinds of companies, not just bigger corporation or medium-sized companies, but also smaller ones. Yeah, and the products basically changed from day one up until now quite a lot, not just in how we do them, but also the product in general. So what's not on here, for example, is localization testing, which is something we do a lot. So a client launches in several countries, and we need to make sure that the translations are done right on the one hand, and also that it doesn't screw up the design and the layout. So German is usually has very long sentences, so it might just flow over in the boxes that you have. So that's a special kind of functional test, you could call it. And we also just rented our platform in general to another company. So they basically, the platform that we built is now used for internal testing for a very big company for their own products and services. And it's hosted on their servers, but it's what we developed. And that's something that we didn't think actually could happen. It just came up, and then we thought, hey, let's do it. Okay, this is the team almost a year ago, actually. Just before we went to Oktoberfest. The office is actually quite nice, just on 100 meters from the Theresienwiese. But usually it doesn't look like that. Usually it looks like that. And that's quite a good representation of what happens on a daily basis. It's not that people are fighting all the time, but the bigger you get, the more you run into organizational issues. So in the beginning we were 5 people, 10 people, 15 people was kind of a barrier. Up until then everybody knew what happened all the time. You know, you were sitting in 3 offices maybe, and you just knew, okay, everything that happens, I know about it. But after 15 people, that changed, and we needed to come up with processes for people to actually know what they're supposed to do, because you then have lots of different roles, and also who they should tell it to, so that people actually know what's happening. One good example is that we still have a breakfast every week. In the beginning, this was mandatory, kind of mandatory, and people were supposed to tell what they're working on at the moment. And when we got to like 20-25 people, this took us 1.5 hours every Wednesday morning. So we stopped doing that, and we had to find other ways to share what we're working on. Yeah, I think that I covered that already, the different countries that we're in. These are some of the challenges or questions basically that we ran into. Philip is a big fan of no hierarchy. We're a startup company, right? But I think by now we've realized that you actually need hierarchy on some level, because otherwise it doesn't work. When you have 10 people in one team and everybody's on the same level, it won't work. What you call it, if you call it management or CXO or whatever, that doesn't really matter, but you need hierarchy. For example, now we're looking for a head of sales for the sales team, which is something like 12, 15 people. Up until now, Philip was still doing that himself, and it just doesn't work anymore. Yeah, we heard about the second point already. It's also quite important to not micromanage everybody, because in the beginning, when you're the founder, you're doing everything yourself. And it was quite a hard lesson to learn that I'm not doing anything myself anymore. I'm just managing all the time. And just is not supposed to be negative, but it's a totally different job than it was 1.5 years ago. And people won't like it if you micromanage them, is what I found. But obviously you need to have trust in them, and you need to have the processes that you know that they're doing a good job. If you don't have that, then you will micromanage them anyway, and it won't work. You have to get rid of them, and that's not a nice thing to do. So firing people is something that we had to do several times up until now for various reasons. Some of the reasons was that it was basically mismanagement from our side. Some of the reasons was more in the employee, but it's always a very hard thing to do. Yeah, and that also goes for what happens to the old guys. So people grow with the company, right? So we had people that joined us at the very beginning after half a year, and then they grow with the company, and the company grows around them, and they need to adapt to their different roles that they have. So their job, just like ours, changes as well, and you might give them a different role, so one of the management roles. But you have to be really careful if the person's actually suitable for that role, because just because they've been with you for a long time, it doesn't mean that they're a good manager. But what else can you do with them? I mean, you need to promote them, otherwise they're going somewhere else. So these are very tricky questions that you might not be able to answer in a very positive way. And so up until now, so after 3.5 years, we had lots of people that came and went again and left, not because we fired them, but because they just thought, okay, I need to look for a different job. This was nice, but now I need something else. And that's also hard to realize in the beginning, that people would ever want to do something else than work for Testbirds. Startup image versus professional image, I think depends on the business that you're in. So we're sharing an office with another company, and they're very much into consulting and serious suits all the time, which is fine, but they never called themselves a startup. If they did, they would never get any contracts. For us, it's a little bit different. We have kind of two worlds. We have the tester world, so all the users that we have. For them, basically, we did all the startup promotion and startup competitions. For the clients, in the beginning at least, we didn't really tell them that we were a startup. So we said, yeah, we've done lots of projects and we're quite experienced. I don't want to say you have to lie to people all the time, but you might not want to tell them the full story because, yeah, I mean, if like a big company like O2, if you walk up to them and you say, hey, we are like 3 guys and we just founded a startup and we're awesome, we want to test for you, they won't buy anything probably. But obviously then you also need to deliver. So if you promise something, then you should live up to it. Yes, recruiting is very hard. I spend probably 10-15 hours a week on recruiting. So that's maybe 3 to 6 interviews a week, either telephone or person. Our process is like we always have a telephone interview, then we invite the people to come in. In that stage, it's, for example, then me and somebody from the team. And then, depending on the position, there's either another stage where they get to meet the whole team, or it's the end of the process. But usually, we need 3 to 6 months to find somebody for the right person for a position. And Generation Y is not the problem, but it kind of it just takes a lot of time to screen and find the right people. And what's important for us is that we have people that they know what they get into, because it's not, if they come from a big company, maybe it's something totally different working for us than what they did before, and also that they want to work for Testbirds, because if you just want to work for some company, then you probably won't work in a startup. You need to identify with the product. Yeah, and about culture, I think that's the next part. Yeah, in the beginning, basically, when people joined, we just told them, okay, that's your job, do it. And then they had a couple of colleagues that showed them what to do. By now, we have quite a big onboarding process that happens. So you have a buddy from the company that kind of guides you in the beginning for general stuff like where do I get my coffee, how do I get vacation, all that kind of stuff. And then we have within the team another onboarding process that gets you through. Do I have a slide for that? No. That basically gets you onboarded in all the Testbirds stuff. So if you're a project manager, you need to know how does the platform work, how do I talk to clients, how do I work with this guy from sales who sold the project, how do I evaluate the results, how do I treat the testers, what are the services that we actually sell. So all of the things you need to learn, otherwise it won't work. And if you just throw people in, it might also work, but in the end, you realize after a couple of months that they still have they lack critical information in some areas because just nobody told them. Yeah, and what's also important, what nobody thought about in the beginning is career perspective. So my perspective is basically, I think, about next week or next month. But when you're working in a company, you have your rent and you have maybe a family, you have a dog, whatever, and you have insurances, you have bills, you need to plan your future. And people actually want to know, okay, what does my job look like in a year? What does it look like in 2 years? And that's one of the steps that we're at the moment. Coming up with career paths for people. What can they do in 12 months? What does that mean for your salary, and what does that mean for your responsibility within the company? All of these things came up because people asked us and we didn't know. Okay, this is maybe a bit late in the presentation, but this is the vision that we have for the next couple of years. And that's also why we have the offices in those specific countries. It's because we're focusing on Europe as a market. And this is something that we as the founders came up with. We had a workshop and we thought about, okay, what is it we want to do? Part of that vision is core values that also we as the founders came up with. And then now we're trying to live those on a daily basis with the whole team. So this is something that you screen for when you interview people. You can't, you don't ask them. Yeah. You can't ask them that, but you can find out if they're the kind of people that live along these lines. And those things are also, they look cheesy when you read them, I know that, but it's quite important. And it's stuff that you bring up all the time. And for example, direct feedback is something that you really have to get used to. And also in a positive kind of way, because if you stack things up and then in the half-yearly feedback session you present all the bad things that somebody did, it doesn't really help them. And also it's too late by then. Okay, this slide I think is misplaced. This is part of the onboarding process for a salesperson. And in your founder, when I look at this, I think, are we a bloody corporation? We're not, but you just need it at some point. Otherwise it doesn't work. I think it's about how you live those things that differentiate you as a startup or as a young company to a bigger company. The vision is basically, okay, Testbirds, most innovative crowd testing company in Europe. And the core values is also what we as the founders came up with. The mission is something in between, and the mission has different kinds of areas. Like we have a mission for the employees, we have a mission for the customers. You can have one for the testers that we have, and basically that middle block is something that the whole team actually worked to create. So what we do every 3 to 4 months is we go on a workshop, 2 days usually. That's a mix of coming up with or developing the company in some kind of way, and also just fun stuff. This was the last one that was in, I think, April. We went to somewhere, some nice lake, I think, in Bavaria, and rented a barn that was kind of fitted with chairs and stuff, and just had a workshop. And this was for developing the customer mission. So the whole team, all the different departments basically worked on how do we deliver innovative and leading services to our customers. And you get lots of nice and productive results out of that. And another learning is that if you have those results, you need to follow up on them. Because people will ask you in 2 months, okay, what happened to that stuff? I put all that work in there. And what we did in the beginning is we just thought we had everything that we needed, and then we put it in a drawer and didn't use it again. So you need to continue doing the things. This was one of the exercises. You had to draw a picture for leading and a picture for innovative, and this was what one of the people did. Yeah, that was the other part. I think there was another, we call them flyouts, where we just went on a team building event and had we built a raft. They actually all floated. And this is now the end, more or less. 2 learning slides. One is more personally, and one is as a team or company. I'm learning every day. That's basically what happens. Most of the things I have to do, I've never done them before, and people also notice that. But I think that's what it's like in the startup, and it's important to just accept that and then keep going from there. As long as you stick to for me, as long as you stick to the values that you have, this will usually work. Yeah, and in the beginning we had nothing to lose, so we just started. Yeah, and usually what happens is whenever you think everything's perfect, it changes. Because there's something that I read that was really nice, a nice term that somebody said, it's you have management debt. So basically when you do all the easy management decisions, that works now, but the debt piles up, and after 2 months, 6 months, a year, it basically hits the fan, and then you're screwed. So we had a couple of times basically where the teams was just not really working, we didn't sell good enough and whatever, and that always comes after the good times, and that's kind of you need to deal with that and try to straighten things out as much as possible. Yeah, you need to find, when you interview people, you need to find the people that are better than you at what they're supposed to do. So whether for me, for example, it was marketing, PR, or project management, you need to get the people in there that do it better, because in the beginning you do it all yourself and you're kind of good at everything, but then you need the people who are very good at the stuff that they're supposed to do. And this, don't forget about the fun. Okay, I think these go together. Whether you have, it's more difficult if you have a physical product that you need to build, then you just can sell the idea. But for us, it was quite easy to just go out there and sell it to people. And then you get feedback, and then you can change what you sell, and then you can optimize it and sell it again, and maybe make it more expensive because it's now better, and just keep going like that. These actually all go in the same direction. Yeah, if the team doesn't work, then probably your startup won't work. And we're spending lots of time trying to make sure that it works, and we're still having lots of bumps, but in general, I think the team works pretty good at the moment. And you have to come up with a structure. You might not need a chart with all the people listing what their positions are and who's higher than the other one, but you need to make sure that people know who they're reporting to and what their jobs actually are and what's expected of them. Because if they don't know what's expected of them, you will be disappointed by what they do. That's it. Questions?
You showed us your business model canvas. Did you really start with that?